let's add facial expression system. Okay, so open up this bad boy right here, content tree view. I'm gonna add a couple of features, a couple of blueprints to begin with. Just call this facial expressions. It's fine. Jump in there. Inside that folder, you want to create two blueprint class elements. First one is a blueprint interface. That's going to be called BPI, just for blueprint interface, and then facial. Actually, we'll call that an MVP. Simple one. New facial expression. This is going to be the interface to send the data to the animation blueprint. That takes one input, new facial expression, and then I'm just going to type byte in brackets there because I don't want to pass the actual enumerator. I just want to pass a byte for performance. It's not a big deal in something small like this, but it's just good practice. You don't need to send the enumerator, you can just send the byte. Shut up, truck. Okay, that's that. It's literally all you need from the interface for now. Blueprints, enumeration. I'm going to create a new enumerator, and that's going to be called E for enumerator. Facial expressions, and then we just create 8 of those. Got a default, which is just the standard, the face as it rests. And you got anger, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, surprise, and blink, which in the animation itself is called wink, but it's blink. That's cool. That's cool. So there we go. That's the enumerator done. You just need those two set up to start everything. Okay, back over here. This is optional, and I'll explain later what we use it for. But for now, it's worth having just so it's there. Inside your character blueprint, you want a facial expression variable, which uses that new enumerator we just created. Search for facial and it'll show up there. And now you've got that assigned, so that's just a variable of type enumerator facial expression. Compile that, save, and you can see now you can select from those options we just created in the enumerator. For now, that's all you need to do right there. We'll come back to that. Now you need to go to the animation blueprint, which I think is here. There you go. So that's in underneath the customizable character kit. You just go to mannequin animations. This is on the sporty. It might be in a different spot for the other packs. I can't remember, but you'll find it. If you need to find it, what you can do is you can just click on the character in the map and go to the root or the mesh, either one will have to show it, and that's anim class right there. That's the animation blueprint, and you can just hit the little magnifying glass and it'll take you to it. Oh, I was wrong. It's using basic retargeted anim blueprint, so it's a good idea to do that rather than thinking that you know where to go. Okay. Here you go. Oops, sorry. Match that back up. Okay, so in here, we're going to add that blueprint interface we created. So that was BPI and blueprint. That's simple. Now this will show up over here, the interfaces options, and we're just going to implement that function. Right click on that, implement function. There you go. And now we're going to create a variable here. If I could type, that'd be cool. Facial expression, again, it's enumerator facial expression. Boom. And we're going to set that using that byte that comes from that interface. Pretty simple what it's doing. If you haven't worked with interfaces before, all it's doing is passing a value between the two blueprints, and we'll show you how you call this in a moment, but for now all you need to do is set up a receiving event. When this event is called, this byte will be passed in and set this value here, and that's all we need to do in the event graph. Now in the anim graph, this is where the magic happens. So over here, where our default states are, we're going to add a blend per bone, and this will allow us to layer an animation based on a specific bone in the skeleton, and for us we want that to be the head. And just be aware that if that rotation blend is ticked, it will cause some issues because your head will be locked to the rotation of the animation that we use, and it causes issues. So the best bet is to just leave that unchecked here. And we're going to create a new state machine. We'll call that facial expression states. We'll pipe that into the blend pose 0 node input, and we're done there. That's everything in here. Very, very simple state machine. Keep writing it that way. Anyway, very simple state machine. It has one state, and it's pretty simple what it's going to be doing. Just give a bit of more room there. It's going to have blend poses. I'm going to search for blend poses, and we'll just take that one right there, facial expressions. And what we'll do is we'll connect this variable that we created up to determine which pose this node uses. And then, once we've done that, because we selected the facial expressions option from the different types of blend poses, you'll notice here there's 50 million different ones that all can use different enumerators. What you want is the facial expressions one, because that will give you these pins for each element. You don't have to worry about default, because there's already a default, so we can just add the rest of them: anger, disgust, fear, etc. until we've added them all. Now, what I recommend is to promote that float to a variable, call it facial expression blend time, and we'll set a default on that. 0.2 is fine. You can make it slower or faster. This will determine how fast it moves between each expression when you change that value, when you change that variable there. And 0.2 is fine, and then you just feed that into all those. It makes it easier later if you want to change that value. You don't have to go through each one by one. You can just change that value here over in the variables, change that to whatever you want it to be, and that's done. And now what you want to do is grab the showcase animation and drag it in, and you need to convert that to a single frame animation. Once you've done that, you'll be able to allocate a specific time in the animation where you want the pose to be used, right? Which pose you want it to use. That already has all the right defaults that we want. We want an explicit time, and we want to teleport to the explicit time, so everything here is fine, completely fine to use the defaults. But now, the fun part, we just create 8 of these. So, copy, paste, grab the 2 that you just created, copy, paste, grab the 4. There you go. You've got 8 of them. Just move these a little bit over here, let's get some room, and we're going to connect those up one by one. So there you go, those are connected. Now really the final part in this process is to set these times, and then we're going to add a demo so you can show what's actually happening here. But for now, this would actually get the feature implemented once you've done this. So what we need to do is open up that animation, and we're going to reference the time in the animation where we want to generate the pose from. So just just grab the head so we can see these working and see these are the poses we want, and all we need to do over here, explicit time. So default is going to be 0, that's fine, that's the default face is at 0 seconds. Let's say we want anger, we want something like 1 second, like, you know, exactly 1 second, it would look, it's right in the middle of that curve. So we grab that, anger, now second evaluate pose node gets set to an explicit time of 1 second. The next one is disgust. Let's find that, disgust, and that's this curve here, so 3.7 is fine. So let's take that, plug it in there, 3.7. Next one is fear. Let's grab fear, which is right next door. So that's 5 seconds, should be fine, yep. 5 seconds. Next one is joy. Let's find joy. Joy is 2.4 is good enough for joy. Next one is sadness. Oh, 6.6 is good for sadness. Next one is surprise. Surprise is about 7.9. It's fine. These don't need to be exact. They just, what's important is that that time there, the time in the animation is at 1 on the curve, so that you get the full animation. If you went halfway down, if you picked 4.7 for fear, for instance, you would be halfway between the curve and you wouldn't get the full facial expression. So you want, you know, you might want that. You might want it sort of halfway in between. That might be where you wanted it to be. You didn't like the full expression, so you could do that if you wanted to. You could set it to 4.72 and it would be halfway between. So that's what these numbers here are doing. So blink pose is all the way down the end at about 9.3 will be good for that. 9.3. Okay, so that's done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a control so that we can update this facial expression on the fly at runtime. What that looks like. We're done here, we're done here, animation blueprint work is done. We don't need this anymore, we don't need this anymore. So what we're going to do, inside the character blueprint, back in the character blueprint, you need to open that, it's back in that blueprints folder. Just grab that third person character and open that up. I want my key to be Y. You could set this to whatever the hell you want it to be. You could set up an input in your project settings to do this. This is just purely to show it in action. If you were really going to use it in a game setting, you'd probably want to actually set this value depending on a certain event. So say your character fires his weapon, that's when you might want him to look angry, so that's when you'd make the interface call that we're about to make. So I will show you what that looks like right now. So we're going to get that variable we created, and this is why we want a local reference to this facial expression variable. And we're going to search for plus, byte plus byte, and +1 is perfect, is exactly what we want. And we want a equals equals. We want to check if the next facial expression in the list, so what this is doing is, if I'm currently on default, and I add 1, now I'm on anger. If I'm at the end, I need to go back to the start rather than just going up 1 over and over again, right? So if I'm at the end, if my byte +1 is 8, in other words, if I was at byte 7, because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if I was at byte 7 and I added 1, I'd go off the reservation and there'd be no option there to pick. So if that's true, that I am at the current byte +1 equals 8, then what I actually want to do is set that to default, so that I go back to the start, right? So if +8 would take me off the reservation, I need to go back to the start to my default. Done, okay? But if it's not true, then what I actually want to do is, again, we're going to set that. I'm just holding Alt there so that it creates a setter instead of having to select from these options here. If you hold Alt down, it'll just automatically create a setter. rather than a getter. So that is going to be this number here. So, like I explained, if we're not at the end, then we want to use this number, this current facial expression plus 1, and it just automatically converts that back from a byte. So when you add the 1, it uses the byte value, and here it's actually the enumerator value. So that's getting a bit deep. Most people won't care about that stuff, and it takes care of it for you because Unreal knows that most people don't care about that stuff. But what we're going to do next is the fun bit. What's it called? Update facial expression. New facial expression, I called it. Whoops. So that's you want the one that says message, and that's going to call that interface. And what you need to do, both of those are going to call the interface no matter what. You can connect that to this guy, and it'll get the right one. It doesn't matter that it's connected to this one; it'll get the right value because it actually just gets the current value of facial expression. It doesn't get the one that was set here. So even if we go down this path and set to default, this, when it pulls the value, when it gets to this node, it will get the right one. It knows what's going on. Okay, now the important thing here is that you get the anim instance from your mesh, and we want that to be the parent mesh, this guy. If you haven't got all these modular meshes, that'll be the only one available. And it actually, at the moment, needs to be the head. It won't work on a pre-made character, it'll only work when it's the modular setup with the head. We'll get there with that, I'm sure that'll be fixed in the future, but for now that's how it has to be. And we're going to plug that into target, so what we're doing there is when we make that interface call, we need to have a target. If there's no target in there, it'll actually fail. It can't target no one, it needs to have a target, so we'll just set that target is going to be the animation instance that's running on the mesh, which is right there. Third person anim blueprint, the one that we customized. So that's plugged in, connected, compiled, saved. We're going to go back to the main scene, grab the third person character on the camera boom, just reduce that target arm length to 30, just so it's nice and close. We don't really need to see her butt. So we just take that back to where it would have. Yours is probably set to 50. I'd just been playing with mine before. Not that I was looking at her butt, but I was just playing around with the camera distance. Okay, so 50 is probably good because we just want to focus on the face and get a nice close-up. And then we're going to run that. Oh. I had a bug and I had to drag a new character into the window, so mine is not configured correctly. She needs to be set to auto possess player 0. Now I'm in control of her. Now, it won't work on the pre-made character, because the pre-made character's animations don't work with that the skeleton for the pre-made character doesn't work with that animation right now. So just go to a modular character. And then press Y, or whatever key you bound in your blueprint. And I might just move that camera up a little bit. She reconstructs when you change a value. That's why this skin looks weird like that. And that is not actually doing exactly what I want. Oh, I know why. Oh, that's too high. Let's go back down. 70 is probably good. Yeah, that's perfect. Go back into the world. I'm just pressing F8 to switch out so I can click on things, and then F8 to go back into the game. Now, that'll fix the mesh issue when we scroll to a new mesh. Now, we can just tap through all the animations. All the morph targets, I should say. And that's how you do custom facial expressions. And then, if you wanted it to happen on a certain event, like you fire your weapon and she changes to an angry face, and then when you release the trigger she goes back, it's all based on this message, this interface message. So somewhere in your shooting blueprint, or somewhere in your event, sorry, your shooting event, you would call this message, you'd send it to the anim instance with the facial expression you want. So something like this, you just have a new one of these, a new one of these. Somewhere inside your shooting event you would just call these two, and you pass through the one that you want. So say we want it to look angry when she shoots, for instance. Anytime now, my computer will wake up. And we'd have to, again, we'd have to send that to the right target. This will fail if you don't do this. It'll actually fail to compile if you don't do that. And that's what you'd, so something like that. And then when you stop shooting, you just set it back to, you'd have another set of these nodes and you just set it back to default. So that's a simple way to change the morph target and make sure that it's, this happens naturally, so that she moves, she morphs between the target, like between the expressions, rather than just jumping straight to the expression. It makes it, the animation blueprint will take care of the morphing, making sure, the blending I should say, between the morph targets. And that's that. Have fun.